Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever found yourself saying yes when every part of you wanted to scream no? Have you ever felt like you're constantly pouring into others, yet your own cup remains empty? If so, then listen closely because today I am here to tell you something that might change your life. It's time to stop being the nice girl. Not because kindness is wrong, not because caring is a weakness, but because somewhere along the way, being nice has turned into being invisible. You smile when you don't want to. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You bend over backward to please others only to be overlooked, underestimated, or worst of all, completely ignored. And I ask you, is that the life you want? The trap of niceness is something many women fall into without even realizing it. From an early age, girls are taught to be polite, agreeable, and accommodating. They are praised for being sweet, for putting others first, for avoiding conflict. Society conditions them to believe that their worth is tied to how much they can give, how well they can serve, and how effortlessly they can make others comfortable. Over time, this mindset becomes ingrained, shaping their interactions, decisions, and even their self-perception. Being nice starts as a virtue, but often turns into a prison. It becomes a set of unspoken rules that dictate behavior. Don't speak too loudly. Don't take up too much space. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Be helpful, be pleasant, be agreeable. It's a slow conditioning process. And before long, being nice is no longer a choice, but an expectation. This expectation seeps into every aspect of life. In friendships, it means always being the one who listens, but never the one who is heard. It means being the friend who is available at all times, the one who never says no, the one who carries the emotional burden of others without question. In relationships, it means putting a partner's needs above your own, making endless compromises, and ignoring your own discomfort for the sake of keeping the peace. In the workplace, it means taking on extra work without recognition, staying silent when passed over for a promotion, or hesitating to assert yourself because you don't want to be seen as difficult. But the real danger of the trap of niceness is that it leads to a slow erosion of self. It creates a person who is constantly giving but rarely receiving. A person who prioritizes others so much that they forget their own needs, desires, and boundaries. It fosters a habit of self-sacrifice that, over time, leads to exhaustion, resentment, and even a loss of identity. One of the most deceptive aspects of this trap is that it masquerades as kindness. But there is a crucial difference between being kind and being nice. Kindness is a choice. It comes from strength, from self-awareness, from a place of generosity that is not rooted in fear or obligation. True kindness is powerful. It allows a person to help others without losing themselves in the process. Niceness, on the other hand, is often a survival mechanism. It is driven by the need for approval, by the fear of rejection, by the worry that saying no or standing up for oneself will result in being disliked or abandoned. This fear is reinforced by the way society reacts to women who refuse to play by the rules. The moment a woman stops being the nice girl, she is met with resistance. If she speaks up, she is labeled aggressive. If she sets boundaries, she is called difficult. If she prioritizes herself, she is accused of being selfish. This backlash can be painful, making many women retreat back into their old patterns, convincing themselves that being nice is easier, safer, and less disruptive. But the cost of this safety is far too high. A lifetime spent in the trap of niceness means a lifetime of unmet needs, of stifled dreams, of suppressed voices. It means constantly putting others first, only to be left feeling empty and unseen. It means allowing fear to dictate choices rather than stepping into the power of self-worth and authenticity. Breaking free from this trap is not easy. It requires unlearning years of conditioning and reprogramming the way one sees themselves and their place in the world. It requires understanding that worth is not determined by how much one gives, but by who they are at their core. It demands the courage to disappoint people, to be misunderstood, to risk rejection in the pursuit of self-respect. The moment a woman stops being trapped by niceness, she reclaims her power. She realizes that she is not responsible for managing other people's emotions. She understands that setting boundaries is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. She learns that saying no does not make her unkind, but rather, it makes her someone who values herself enough to honor her own needs. She discovers that real relationships, whether in friendships, family, or work, are built on mutual respect, not on silent sacrifices. The people who truly value her will not walk away just because she stops saying yes to everything. The ones who leave were only there for what they could take, not for who she truly is. The world teaches women to be nice, to be small, to be accommodating, but true fulfillment does not come from constantly bending to fit into spaces that were never meant for them. It comes from standing tall, taking up space, and refusing to apologize for existing on their own terms. From a young age, many women are taught to prioritize the needs of others above their own. They are conditioned to believe that their role in life is to be caregivers, nurturers, and peacemakers. They are told to be polite, to avoid confrontation, to always be accommodating. As a result, they grow up believing that their value is tied to how much they can give, how well they can serve, and how easily they can make others comfortable. This mindset follows them into adulthood, shaping their relationships, careers, and overall sense of self-worth. They learn to say yes when they want to say no. They smile when they feel like crying. They downplay their achievements so others won't feel uncomfortable. They apologize for things that aren't their fault. They take on burdens that aren't theirs to carry, thinking that this is what it means to be a good person, a good friend, a good daughter, a good partner, a good employee. They become so accustomed to putting others first that they forget how to prioritize themselves. But what happens when a woman spends her whole life being the nice girl? She becomes exhausted. She feels unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. She starts to feel invisible in her own life. She watches as others take advantage of her kindness, as they assume she will always be there to pick up the pieces, to fix things, to make sacrifices without ever expecting anything in return. And slowly she begins to resent the very role she was taught to embrace. Being the nice girl often means living a life full of unspoken frustrations. It means swallowing anger when someone disrespects her. It means tolerating toxic behavior because she doesn't want to be seen as rude. It means avoiding difficult conversations because she doesn't want to make others uncomfortable. It means sacrificing her dreams because she is too afraid of disappointing those around her. And yet, no matter how much she gives, it never seems to be enough. No matter how selfless she is, people still find reasons to expect more. She starts to wonder why her kindness is not reciprocated. She starts to question why people take advantage of her willingness to help, but never offer her the same in return. She realizes that being nice has not protected her from pain, from disappointment, from betrayal. Instead, it has made her an easy target for those who see kindness as weakness. The truth is that people treat you based on what you allow. If you constantly put others ahead of yourself, they will assume that your needs don't matter. If you never speak up when you are mistreated, they will believe that you are okay with being disrespected. If you never say no, they will continue to ask for more. The cycle continues because the nice girl believes that if she just gives enough, if she just tries harder, if she just proves her worth, then maybe, just maybe, people will appreciate her. But the world does not reward self-sacrifice. It does not hand out trophies for being the most accommodating, the most agreeable, the most patient. The people who succeed, who command respect, who live fulfilling lives are the ones who know how to set boundaries, who are not afraid to take up space, who understand that their needs are just as important as anyone else's. When a woman finally decides to stop being the nice girl, she does not become cruel, selfish, or unkind. She simply starts valuing herself. She stops apologizing for who she is. She stops over-explaining her decisions. She stops allowing others to dictate how she should feel, how she should behave, how she should live. She learns that setting boundaries does not mean it is necessary. Saying no is not rude, it is a way of protecting her time, energy, and peace. Standing up for herself is not aggressive, it is a declaration that she refuses to be treated as less than she deserves. She realizes that she does not have to please everyone to be worthy of love and respect. The right people will respect her even when she says no. The right people will value her even when she stops being the one who always gives, always bends, always compromises. The wrong people will fall away, revealing that their connection was never about mutual respect, but about convenience. This realization is not easy. It comes with discomfort, with pushback, with people accusing her of changing, of becoming too cold, too distant, too different. But change is not a bad thing when it is a transformation towards self-respect, confidence, and strength. She begins to understand that her time is valuable. She no longer agrees to things out of obligation. She no longer tolerates toxic relationships just to avoid confrontation. She no longer waits for validation from others to know her worth. She starts prioritizing her own happiness, her own dreams, her own well-being. And for the first time, she feels free. She realizes that she is not responsible for how others perceive her. She cannot control who misunderstands her, who feels threatened by her confidence, or who resents her for no longer bending over backward to accommodate their needs. But she can control how she responds. She can choose to stand firm in her decisions, to trust herself, to embrace the power that comes from living authentically. The world does not need more nice girls who shrink themselves to fit into roles that no longer serve them. It needs women who know their worth, who refuse to settle for less, who are unapologetically themselves. Because when a woman stops being just nice and starts being real, she steps into the kind of strength that changes everything. From the moment we enter this world, we are taught to be kind, polite, and accommodating. We are told that being nice is the key to being liked, respected, and accepted. We learn to say please and thank you, to be considerate of others, to put their needs before our own. We grow up believing that the more we give, the more we sacrifice, the more we tolerate, the more valuable we become. But over time, we begin to realize something that shakes us to our core. Being nice does not always mean being respected. There comes a moment when we look around and see that despite our kindness, we are often overlooked, dismissed, or taken for granted. We notice that the very people we bend over backward for do not extend the same courtesy in return. We find ourselves constantly saying yes when we want to say no, afraid that asserting ourselves will make us seem selfish or unkind. We tolerate being spoken over, ignored, or taken advantage of, convincing ourselves that being patient and understanding is the right thing to do. But deep down, we feel the exhaustion. We feel the resentment building up. We feel the weight of carrying everyone else's burdens while no one carries ours. We are taught that being a good person means being agreeable. But at what cost? How many dreams have been put on hold because we were too afraid of disappointing others? How many boundaries have been crossed because we were too scared to say stop? How many times have we stayed silent when we wanted to speak up, afraid of making waves, afraid of being seen as difficult? The truth is, being a nice girl often means being a people pleaser, someone who puts everyone else's happiness before their own, someone who seeks validation through approval. And the harsh reality is that no matter how much we try, no matter how much we give, it will never be enough for everyone. We live in a world that takes advantage of those who are too afraid to stand up for themselves. It rewards confidence, not compliance. It respects those who demand respect, not those who wait for it to be given. And yet we hesitate. We tell ourselves that if we just keep being nice, if we keep making others happy, then one day they will see our worth. But worth is not something that is given, it is something that must be claimed. No one else is responsible for valuing us we are. When we decide to stop being just nice, something shifts. We begin to understand the difference between being kind and being a pushover. We realize that setting boundaries is not cruel, it is necessary. We see that self-respect is not arrogance, it is a declaration of our worth. We start saying no without guilt. We start walking away from people in situations that drain us. We start prioritizing ourselves, not because we don't care about others, but because we finally care about ourselves. There will be resistance. People who benefited from our silence will be the first to criticize our voice. Those who thrived off our compliance will be the first to call us difficult, selfish, or changed. And they will be right, we have changed. We are no longer willing to be taken for granted. We are no longer willing to sacrifice ourselves for the comfort of others. We are no longer willing to be defined by how much we can endure. Stepping away from the role of the nice girl does not mean becoming unkind. It does not mean becoming rude, harsh, or cold. It simply means recognizing our worth and refusing to let others diminish it. It means embracing our strength, our confidence, our ability to stand tall in a world that constantly tries to shrink us. It means speaking up, taking up space, and refusing to apologize for existing as we are. The world does not need more women who quietly accept what they are given. It needs women who demand what they deserve. It needs women who are unafraid to set boundaries, to chase their dreams without apology, to walk away from anything that does not serve them. Because the moment we stop seeking approval, the moment we stop waiting for permission, we become unstoppable. Have you ever wondered why, despite doing everything right, despite always being kind, accommodating, and selfless, you still feel exhausted, unappreciated, and invisible? From childhood, we are taught that being nice is a virtue, that politeness, obedience, and self-sacrifice will earn us love and respect. We are told to be the peacemakers, the nurturers, the ones who hold everything together without complaint. But somewhere along the way, we begin to see a different reality, one that is far from the fairy tale we were promised. We notice that our kindness is often mistaken for weakness, that people expect us to always say yes, to always be available, to always put others before ourselves. We realize that the more we give, the more people take, and yet the moment we dare to ask for something in return, we are made to feel guilty, ungrateful, or demanding. We stay silent when we should speak up. We tolerate behavior that we should walk away from. And we keep giving chances to those who do not deserve them. We believe that being understanding and forgiving is the right thing to do, but at what cost? How much of ourselves do we lose in the process? It is time to question the narrative that has been fed to us. Why is it that when a woman stands up for herself, she is called difficult? Why is it that when she prioritizes herself, she is labeled selfish? Why is it that strength in a woman is often seen as a threat rather than an inspiration? The answer is simple: because the world benefits from women who do not recognize their own power. The world thrives on women who are too afraid to take up space, too afraid to say no, too afraid to demand what they deserve. And as long as we continue to play by these unspoken rules, we will always be at the mercy of others. But what happens when we stop being nice in the way the world expects us to be? What happens when we start putting ourselves first without apology? We begin to see a shift, a transformation that is both liberating and terrifying. We start setting boundaries, and suddenly people who once relied on our compliance become uncomfortable. We say no without justifying it. And suddenly those who took advantage of us begin to resent us. We refuse to shrink ourselves to fit into the mold that society has created, and suddenly we are seen as too much, too strong, too independent. And that is where the real challenge begins. Because when we decide to reclaim our power, when we refuse to be defined by how much we can endure, we will face resistance. People who benefited from our silence will try to convince us that we are in the wrong. They will say we have changed, that we have become cold, that we are no longer the person they once knew. But the truth is, we have not changed, we have simply awakened. We have realized that our worth is not determined by how much we can give to others, but by how much we honor ourselves. This awakening is not easy. It requires us to unlearn years of conditioning. It requires us to sit with the discomfort of disappointing people who expected us to always comply. It requires us to let go of relationships, friendships, and even family ties that no longer serve us. But as painful as it may be, it is necessary. Because the alternative, the life of constantly seeking approval, of bending to the will of others, of sacrificing our happiness for the sake of being liked, is far worse. There is a difference between being kind and being a doormat. There is a difference between being compassionate and being a people pleaser. And there is a difference between being selfless and being self-destructive. The world will tell you that your worth is measured by how much you can give, but I am here to tell you that your worth is measured by how much you value yourself. The moment you stop being nice in the way the real world expects you to be, you will begin to attract a different kind of respect. The right people will admire your strength, not resent it. The right opportunities will come not because you played small, but because you dared to take up space. And most importantly, you will begin to feel a sense of peace that comes from knowing that you no longer live for the approval of others, but for the fulfillment of your own purpose. So to every woman who has ever been told to be quiet, to be small, to be nice at the expense of her own happiness, I say, enough. It is time to redefine what it means to be a strong woman. It is time to stop asking for permission to exist in your full power. It is time to stand tall, speak up, and embrace the strength that has always been within you. From the time we are little girls, we are told to be nice. We are praised for being polite, obedient, and agreeable. We are taught that a well-mannered, soft-spoken girl is a good girl. We grow up believing that our kindness is our greatest strength, that our ability to care for others, to forgive, to be patient, and to compromise is what makes us valuable. And so, we become the ones who say yes when we want to say no, the ones who stay silent when we should speak up, the ones who sacrifice our own needs so that others can be comfortable. We believe that if we are just nice enough, if we just give enough, if we just love enough, then we will be loved and appreciated in return. But then life begins to show us a different reality. We start to notice that no matter how kind we are, no matter how much we give, some people will still take us for granted. We see that our politeness is mistaken for weakness, that our patience is exploited, that our kindness is not always met with kindness. We find ourselves exhausted, depleted, and questioning why the very qualities we were taught to embrace are the ones that seem to leave us feeling so empty. We begin to wonder, why does being nice feel so heavy? The answer is simple. It is because we have confused being nice with being self-sacrificing. We have been conditioned to believe that putting ourselves last is a virtue, that being liked is more important than being respected, that our worth is tied to how much we can endure. We have been told that being a good woman means making everyone happy, even if it comes at the cost of our own happiness. And so we apologize when we have nothing to be sorry for. We smile when we are uncomfortable. We tolerate disrespect to avoid confrontation. We say yes when every fiber of our being wants to say no. But the truth is, no one will respect you until you respect yourself. The world does not value those who constantly shrink themselves to accommodate others. The world does not reward those who remain silent when they should speak. The world does not honor those who spend their lives seeking approval instead of standing firm in their own worth. And that is why it is time to stop being just a nice girl. It is time to understand that your kindness should be a choice, not an obligation. It should come from a place of strength, not fear. It should be something you offer to those who deserve it, not something you give away freely to those who only take and never give back. It is time to recognize that being kind does not mean being a pushover. Being compassionate does not mean tolerating mistreatment. Being understanding does not mean accepting less than you deserve. The moment you stop being the nice girl, you will begin to see a shift in your life. You will notice that people who only valued you for what you could do for them will start to disappear. You will see that those who were comfortable taking advantage of you will call you difficult, selfish, or arrogant. They will say you have changed, and they will be right, you have. You have stopped seeking validation from those who never truly appreciated you. You have stopped living to please others and have started living for yourself. This transformation is not easy. It will be uncomfortable. You will feel guilty at first because you have spent your whole life believing that your value lies in how much you can give. But over time, you will realize that protecting your peace is not selfish. Prioritizing your happiness is not wrong. Saying no does not make you unkind. It makes you strong. It makes you aware of your worth. It makes you someone who no longer settles for less than she deserves. There will be moments when you question yourself. Moments when you wonder if you are being too harsh, too distant, too uncaring. But in those moments, remind yourself of all the times you gave too much and received too little. Remind yourself of the nights you stayed up worrying about people who never thought twice about you. Remind yourself of the times you apologized for things that were never your fault. And then remind yourself that you deserve better. You deserve relationships where your kindness is reciprocated. You deserve friendships where your presence is valued, not just needed. You deserve to be surrounded by people who respect your boundaries, who uplift you, who celebrate your strength instead of taking advantage of it. And the only way to attract those kinds of people is to become the kind of person who refuses to settle for anything less. So, to every woman who has ever felt like she had to be nice to be accepted, to every woman who has put herself last because she was afraid of being seen as selfish, to every woman who has been told to be quieter, to be smaller, to be easier to handle, I want you to know that your worth is not determined by how much you can endure. You do not have to be the nice girl to be loved, to be respected, to be valued. You do not have to constantly give, to constantly prove yourself, to constantly bend so that others can be comfortable. There is power in saying no. There is power in walking away. There is power in standing firm in who you are. And when you embrace that power, when you stop being just a nice girl and start being a strong, self-respecting woman, you will begin to see just how unstoppable you truly are. From the moment we are born, the world starts shaping us into the kind of women it wants us to be. We are given dolls instead of cars, soft colors instead of bold ones, and words of caution instead of encouragement. We are told to be sweet, gentle, and accommodating. We are taught that our greatest asset is our ability to nurture, to compromise, to keep the peace. We are conditioned to believe that the best way to navigate life is to be agreeable, to put others first, and to never make anyone uncomfortable. And so we grow up trying to fit into this mold. We say yes even when we want to say no. We apologize for things that are not our fault. We try to be perfect, likable, and non-threatening. We suppress our anger, our opinions, and even our dreams to avoid upsetting others. We become the ones who listen more than we speak, who give more than we take, who forgive even when we have not received an apology. But somewhere along the way, we begin to realize something. We begin to see that no matter how nice we are, no matter how much we give, the world does not always return that kindness. If we start to notice that people take advantage of our generosity, that our patience is mistaken for weakness, that our silence is interpreted as acceptance, we start to understand that the more we bend, the more people expect us to break. And then we ask ourselves, why? Why do we continue to shrink ourselves? Why do we keep sacrificing our own needs for the comfort of others? Why do we believe that in order to be loved, we must always be pleasant, always be accommodating, always be available? The truth is, we have been conditioned to believe that being nice is the same as being good, that the more we give, the more we will be valued, that the less we demand, the more we will be appreciated. But life does not work that way. The world does not automatically reward kindness with kindness. People do not always reciprocate the love and effort you give them. And the painful reality is those who are too nice often end up being the ones who are overlooked, overworked, and underappreciated. It is in this realization that a transformation begins. The moment we understand that being overly nice is not the same as being strong, that being self-sacrificing is not the same as being valuable, we start to change. We start to set boundaries. We start to say no without guilt. We start to demand the respect that we always deserved. We stop apologizing for our existence. We stop making ourselves small so that others can feel big. But change is never easy. The moment you stop being just a nice girl, people will react. Some will call you difficult. Some will say you have changed. Some will be angry that you are no longer so easy to manipulate. They will make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. They will try to convince you that you are being selfish. And for a while, you might believe them. You might question if you are doing the right thing. You might feel tempted to go back to your old ways, to say yes even when you don't want to stay silent even when you have something to say, to make others happy even if it means making yourself miserable. But if you push through that discomfort, if you hold your ground, if you continue to value yourself the way you deserve to be valued, you will begin to see the shift. You will start to attract the right people, the ones who respect you, the ones who see your worth without you having to prove it. You will notice that your energy is no longer being drained by people who only take and never give back. You will find that you are no longer exhausted from carrying the weight of other people's expectations. There is a difference between being kind and being a pushover. There is a difference between being caring and being self-sacrificing. There is a difference between being compassionate and being someone who tolerates mistreatment. True strength is not in how much you can endure, but in how much you refuse to tolerate what no longer serves you. True confidence is not in making others happy at your own expense, but in knowing that you are enough, even if not everyone approves of you. This journey is not easy. It requires unlearning everything you have been taught about what it means to be a good woman. It requires breaking free from the belief that your value is tied to your ability to please others. It requires walking away from people who only value you for what you can do for them. It requires being willing to stand alone, if it means standing in your truth. But once you stop being just a nice girl, you will feel something you may not have felt in a long time: freedom. The freedom to be yourself without fear. The freedom to choose yourself without guilt. The freedom to exist without constantly seeking approval. The freedom to live life on your own terms.